Advice. If you'd like to say a few words, then.
I was asked if I could just say a few words to set the scene. You know, my role as Peace and Crime Commissioner is first of all to set out a peace and crime plan. If you haven't seen it, it's on the website, it's 29 pages, and it details every single action that I believe the police should be addressing on behalf of the public. Because I underline that I'm the voice of the public, not the voice of the police. And it is also my duty to set the budget. We have a budget this year of around £131 million. But we do employ something like 2,400 people, so it doesn't get very far. And the other thing to explain, because a lot of people get confused by this, is that although I'm the Peace and Crime Commissioner, I do not direct the police. That is an operational matter that the Chief Constable deals with. And that is not my decision, that is set in law. I'm not able to direct the police. But what I can do is hold them to account on what's in the Peace and Crime Plan, and obviously I can talk to them and persuade them to look at various options. Now, from your point of view, you do have local police who come along here and listen to what you have to say. It's Jason Bragg who's normally coming along, and he will deal with issues, and of course he is part of the operational mode. If it's not working, tell me, because then I can try and roll cogs and put it right. That's my role, not to direct, but to actually roll the cogs. So what else are we doing? Well, I've had an interesting experiment in the north of the county with an outreach worker to really go and start talking to parishes and voluntary organisations and churches and youth groups and everything else to see how that works and the sort of information it brings back to us. It's been a great success, and we're now advertising to have an outreach worker down in the south to cover Cambridge City and surrounding areas. And I think that'll really start to sort of get communications working better on that front, and that person will obviously come to meetings like this. My role, apart from being the Peace Commissioner, is also the Crime Commissioner. And that is a job I have to do to reduce crime. And I put a lot of resource into that, a lot of thought into trying to reduce crime. Dealing with young people, and I've done quite a lot to help young people already. And we've launched a fund for youth organisations where they could apply for anything between £200 and £2,000 to launch a project, give them something to do, start up new groups. That's been inundated actually, and there was £40,000 put there. So I'm looking around to see if we can top it up, but there'll be another £40,000 for next year. But I'm really pleased about that, and some of that money will be going, obviously, in Cambridge itself. So, engaging with young people, I've done a lot to help with Neighbourhood Watch, and I know you haven't got too many of those in Cambridge, but I'm hoping they can develop. Neighbourhood Watch now have their own software, so they're aware of what's going on, what's happened. In the morning you can have a look to see whether there's been any incident in your street, in your neighbourhood, and please flag up if they're looking for particular people or looking for extra sort of information. And that's good, because by doing what we've done, we've got lots of young mums involved that couldn't get involved before because of going out for meetings. Young mums involved, businessmen involved, lots of other people involved, and we're really snowballing in terms of the number of people who are assisting on that. Localised policing is important, and I did promise right at the beginning that I would ensure that we didn't reduce the number of police. We haven't. We've actually increased it by a small number, and we're working very hard on some new technology which will actually increase the number of police out on the streets. So we don't have to go in to write up reports every time there's an incident, they can actually do it whilst they're there. They can sit outside at a coffee shop and do it. So they're visible, they can see what's going on. And it's going to release a whole lot more police out there, because I know everyone's saying to me, we want to see more police about. That is a priority, I promised it, and we're actually going to deliver that. I noticed that we've got a gentleman here who's got a son in the specials. Fantastic. I put a lot of priority into specials. We had 240. I gave them a target of getting to 300. We've been working hard. We've passed 300. We're now heading towards 350. They do a tremendous service. And these people are now young and old, and now people from all walks of life do it voluntarily. But they help the police. They work alongside the police. It's fantastic. And I'm trying to do my very best, because that does give us extra people, particularly at times that you need it, when you've got football matches and problems perhaps at the weekend. So we're doing a lot on that. We've done a lot on trying to deal with problem families. We're doing a lot with collaboration with Bedfordshire and Hertfordshire. This is actually going to end up improving the service and saving money. And I think I can flag up one big success you probably all saw in the last couple of weeks. The triple murder in Peterborough by the woman who killed 3 people. It was horrendous. And had Cambridgeshire been on its own, it would have been almost another Selma. It was too overwhelming to actually deal with. But fortunately, with that alliance, we were able to pull in Hertfordshire, much bigger force obviously, to help. And they solved that in a matter of days. So, this is something that's actually working. We're teaming together with the other people that improve the service. In terms of saving money, as you know, the police budget is being cut. And though it's being cut, we haven't actually in any way cut our service. And I'm pleased to say that in this year, we will have saved successfully £4.9 million and kept the service running on peak performance. And a lot of that is to do with cooperation, bringing in technology. And I say the technology that we're bringing in, which I mentioned, which was the smartphone, is going to save us huge amounts of money, as well as increasing the number of police. So that's because people were telling me they wanted to see the police out on the streets. It is a big priority, and there's no way we're going to let you down.
Thank you. I have one person who submitted a question, so I will ask him to ask his questions first, and I'll take some questions from the floor, then I'll give the councillors a chance, then more from the floor. But I'll start with Mr. Taylor. Would you like to ask your questions of Sir Graham?
Thank you. Well, one of the things that Sir Graham has said that's been one of his big successes is dealing with the problems that existed with the 101 non-emergency phone number and the police's performance answering the phones. And what I'd like to ask the Commissioner is, why hasn't he published the decisions that he's made on that subject, both to the public on his decision log on his website and made them available to the Police and Crime Panel, along with the performance information which shows what has actually changed following those decisions, so that we can all see exactly what you've done and how much of a good job, or to see is a good job you claim to have done, has actually happened. Another area where I'd like to see the Commissioner reporting his decisions relates to when he set up his organisation when he first came into office. So where he did things like decided to hold his key decision-making body, his business coordination board, in secret behind closed doors. One of the things that I've really missed since the transfer to the Commissioner is being able to see, in advance of major police policy changes, what those the proposed changes are, because the police authority published their meeting papers in advance of decisions, whereas your business coordination board doesn't. And I could go to the police authority and I could see people make those decisions and see the decision makers and the chief constable, which I can't do under Sir Graham Wright.
So can I try? So there's two related questions, and then there's your other question as well. I know I'll come back to you on that. The first one is on the particular aspects of the call answering for statistics and changes. Why weren't they published, and why isn't the data available? And then the more general point about, could you make your meetings more open?
First of all, I hate to disappoint, but we have published those, because there have been a number of instances where I've called for reports, and those reports are published. and they're online. So I suggest you go online and have a good look at them. Now, in terms of improving it, 101, I was pretty upset that 101 was taking far too long to respond to somebody who phoned in, and I was picking this up all the time from people. Now, there was an instance where I tried and it took over 9 minutes. We're now getting an average of 7 seconds for the answer. And that is good, but we haven't finished yet because we need to speed up the secondary. In other words, putting you through, getting additional information for you. And that is a matter of training lots of people, which is going on. So we hope to speed that up because obviously it is the way the public engage. And we're very keen on building 101 because we want to know what's going on. If you're concerned about something, if there's something suspicious, let us know about it. But what we don't want you to do is hang on the phone forever. So yes, we've made huge strides on that. And we are now working on the secondary part of that because it is taking too long. I admit that. So do the police. We're working on it. It's a matter of training people. In terms of the board that we have, again, that's all published. It's all online. It's all there for you to read.
Can I ask for some clarifications then? You say that the reports that I was asking for have been published. Are you saying that you've published your records of decision on call answering performance in the same way as you publish your other decisions on your decision log and you report them to the police and crime panel?
Yeah. It was the 101 system was always already up and working. I had to hold the police to account of that, and you will see quite clearly where I've had reports to the board on account and the report that's come back. And I will quite soon have asked for another report on that because I am concerned about the secondary part of things.
So I think that's a no. We haven't had the decision being reported.
I know nonsense. It's there for you to read. I mean, you tell us you're literate, well, go and read them because they're there.
So we hear now that the Commission tells us the average is 7 seconds. What I've been asking for is the statistical information so I can see, for example, how long the longest waits are, and that's the kind of information which we should be.
Okay.
We should have available.
I think that's related, but can someone turn off their microphones and get all the cancelled by so bad? I think that's a related question. I think I'd like to move on if we could. There's a few people who want to get to speak. Do you want to ask your supporting the second one?
Right. Well, something I'd like to ask the Commissioner over here is how he can support the local police priority setting, the democratic police priority setting that we see here. Now, some of our councillors don't actually realise that, Commissioner, that you have actually delegated your local decision making to our councillors here, having heard your initial statement that you will take all the priority setting decisions. They hadn't realised, Councillor Manning made the comment in a recent Cambridge Cycling campaign meeting that he hadn't realised that at the East area you had made clear that you was going to allow councils to continue to set priorities. And I'd like you to support the councils in setting those priorities to get better information to these meetings. For example, when the police come, they provide violent crime statistics, but they don't break that down into violent crime in public on the streets versus domestic violence, for example. They don't give us information on motoring crimes, on speeding offences in the area.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you. I think the general point has been made, so...
I mean, when the police are here, if you want to have some clarification on that, then ask them. The actual policing operation is run by the police. If you're unhappy, write to me. You don't have to wait to come to a public meeting and make a scene. Write to me.
Mrs. B.
I just want to say...
Mrs. B, can you wait for the microphone because some people...
I just want to say, we've got on very well with our 2 PSO officers. We've had a meeting about Brownsfield because, you know, Brownsfield has been taken over now by Chips. And we've had a meeting with Liz and Jerry and Peter, and we've come up with a few ideas for the future to get more of the youngsters off the streets and into the community centre. You know, instead of having to sort of say, can they come, they're going to have it so they can just walk in, have a game pool, have a drink, or something like that. We're hoping to get offenders.
Mrs. B, can I ask you to ask a question?
That is. Another thing is about Maitland Avenue. We have our problems.
Mrs. B, can I interrupt you there? So I'm trying to create a question out of what you said. Are you saying, would the Commissioner support a local effort to reduce youth on, and is there any way he can support such an effort to keep youth off the street? I'm trying to create a question here. Is that what you're asking?
I think it's an important question, because preventing crime and preventing youngsters getting into trouble, and I'm very keen on that. It's not just a matter of them causing crime, but if they do go off the rails, it's a black mark for them forever and a day. You can't go to America, for instance. That's one of the results of that. The cost of when someone goes off the road is phenomenal in terms of what has to be done to support them. So that's why I've been putting money up front in trying to promote youth clubs. And of course, I cover the whole of Cambridge and Peterborough as well. And we have got some good results on that front. And that's why I set the fund up. So, you know, that fund is there for your community to apply for. And it's run by the Cambridge Community Trust. But they always report back to myself and Chief Constable. We sign off whatever they're going to do. But that is important. And I want to encourage young people to actually do something for themselves. And they can't always do that because they lack money. But I mean, you'd be surprised what £200 can do in terms of kick-starting something. And 2,000, of course, even more. So, yeah, I'm absolutely with you on that. And, you know, I'm trying to do as much as I can, wearing my crime commissioner's hat, to actually support youngsters to get them off the streets, to get them to do something useful. There's a youth club outside the city, which I've been looking at and encouraging, where they come in and they don't just drink Coke and play pool. They actually, the leaders get them involved in the community, helping to clear up, you know, clear the wreck up and tidy things up and helping the community itself. And it's done a wonderful thing, because it's given ownership of the community to young people, and that's great. That's you know, these things take time to get underway. I tell you, I'm so committed to that.
Yeah.
And I'm also setting up police cadets, starting with Peterborough. There's a good reason for that, because I've got everything there, but the next target is Cambridge. To try to get young people involved, to show their peers what they can do, and they'll be fully uniformed, they will help the police, they will help the PCSOs, and, you know, I think that is a good way forward. I've been looking at other forces doing that, and I can see it's something that is useful. My past, I was very much involved in the Scouts, and same sort of thing, although we've moved on. So yes, it's a big, big issue as far as I'm concerned, is dealing with youngsters, and I'm doing that with schools and youth clubs, and every possible way I can get involved with them.
Okay, I've got a couple of other people who've indicated to speak, so could I ask Mr. Bond and then Mrs. Harris, and then we'll let the councillors ask some questions.
Thank you, Sir Graham. I was recently the target of a scam phone call. I discovered that your 101 phone system is still not very responsive, and had to abandon my attempt to phone through at the immediate time. But what I was later managed to find more time to make the call and get to talk to someone, I was surprised to find that police actually have to operate with their hands tied behind their back. Because in tracing a scam phone call, I'd recorded the time, but BT required me to give them consent in writing to allow them to tell the police the origin of the scam phone call, which they could actually trace. Now this is crackers, because by that time 48 hours had passed, at least. And if you're trying to catch criminals, that doesn't seem to be the smartest way of going about it. Could you perhaps, or perhaps this is part of the crime commission role that your job imposed, to make it easier for them rather than more difficult, which I don't think was the intention.
Yeah. lots more. A lot of people have their hands tied behind the back because of data protection. Data protection sometimes it's very good that you actually protect people, but at the same time it is a pain when you have that sort of thing happening. Now, I've made a note of that. I wouldn't mind you letting me know specifically about that, so we can track it back and look at it, and we can take it up with BT, and if necessary, take the thing through in terms of pointing out that data protection is allowing people to sort of carry out these scams. And of course the scams are multiplying. There's a huge number of people doing scam phone calls, and of course they're doing scam emails as well. Cybercrime is just, spreading like mad. And I agree with you, we do need to be able to track that back. And if you could let me have the details, I can track it back and we'll use that to see whether we can order some cogs.
I will, because I think you'll find that your officer was so frustrated by the fact. And if we've been able to actually get the trace done within 5 minutes of the call, because your 101 system, if it had been able to respond, and if then the system would allow an immediate trace, they might have actually caught them where it handled it.
I promise you we'll look at that. And if you drop me a note, I will talk to the Chief Constable and some of the senior officers to see how we handle it. And my colleague here has made a note of that. How we handle it, can we improve it? Because it does seem rather stupid to me. But then there's lots of things that are stupid out there, and we try to wrestle with them. And I say that the biggest bugbear is this data protection. But let's see what we can do.
Mrs. Harris.
Thank you. Sorry about cutting you earlier on. My question is quite simple, actually. You spoke earlier on about extra police being seen on the streets. What we would really like to know is what type of police are we having? Are we having the full-blown police officers, CPSOs, or what type of police officer do you expect for us to be seeing on the streets? And can I just add one point for Michael? Last year they actually caught somebody doing a scam, and he's now been reprimanded in court.
Well, that's a good bit of news. What we will be doing is using the police in a different way. At the moment, the police spend a lot of their time inside writing reports. Now, this is the biggest bugbear, and what we're doing is making ourselves paperless. To explain to you what we're doing, we've got an operation called Metis. We're leading the rest of the country on this. The Home Office are backing. We just had some cash to help us sort of push this forward, and we're going to roll it out as well to Hertfordshire and Bedfordshire. The policeman will have a smartphone. We've been trying it out on tablets, but we have a smartphone. Now, he can deal with everything he needs to from the smartphone. He doesn't have to go back in, doesn't have to phone out. And so it's going to release, and I'm loath to put a figure on it, but it could be almost a third more of their time will be spent out on the street and not inside. So that's where we're getting more police from. You'll still have PCSOs, you'll still have the specials, and we hope that once we get this underway, and it won't happen tomorrow, this is going to be rolled out in the next sort of year, 18 months, but it will start to make an improvement. Where we've trialled it, we've been trialling it in Wisbech and Peterborough, absolutely phenomenal. And I said we've even had the Met come up and have a look at it. So this, I believe, is going to deliver what we want to deliver, more police time out on the street.
Councillor Bird.
Thank you. So Graham, I wonder if you could answer a couple of questions for me. Our PCSOs here in East Chesterton are very good. All the children get to know them, the youths get to know them, and suddenly then one of them will leave and go on to be a proper PC. So then we've got the problem again where we're left with perhaps one to do the whole of East Chesterton, and then we get a new one, and the same thing happens again. So I wonder if there's any way we can sort of keep hold of some of the PCSOs that get to know the residents and the kids, which is the most important thing. They come in the schools, do a talk and everything. So I wondered if you can...
I mean, you can't sort of stop people from trying to progress their careers. We talked about specials. One of the terrible things about specials, I'm recruiting and helping and bringing them in. And then they go and join the police. We don't have to recruit. We've got people there that can sort of come straight in. And one of the things we've been doing with PCSOs is training them for special duties as well. So that we've got people out, both the constables and PCSOs, who are specialists, who know how to perhaps deal with someone who's got mental health problems. And that is a serious problem we have to face with the police. The police aren't equipped to do that. It should be the NHS. And fortunately, we are moving forward on that so that we get the NHS to pick that up. Last thing I want to see is someone in a prison, with a mental health problem in a prison cell. So we're training them to do that. We're training them to deal with domestic violence as well. That's much, much bigger than you think it is. It really is. It's horrendous. So we're training them to do that. We're training them to deal with how to deal with sex offenders, and particularly dealing with young children. So that's why they move around a bit. But we are getting better policing. But I was here last week at a thing in the community that was aimed at young people not getting blind dates on the internet. And it was a performance by actors and everything that was put on. And the PCSOs were there. They were absolutely switched on to this. And I thought it was great because it was one of their specialities in trying to sort of get kids not to get themselves into trouble. So I understand what you're saying. We obviously have to keep recruiting. You can't sort of say, no, you can't go up the ladder, you've got to stay there. It's great that they are, and if they are going up, it shows they're good, and that's what we want, is good policemen.
Councillor Warden.
Very interested to hear what you were saying about technology and efficiency. Like many councillors, I have in the past spent a Friday night shift or whatever with the police. I haven't done so for some years. So the pattern then was to attend an incident or take a statement or something, then back to the nick for 4 hours paperwork, rinse and repeat. So that's 2 little bits of work done in an 8-hour shift. I'd like to know how much more efficient you're intending to get, and when I should book my next Friday night with the police to see this in action.
I should give it a little time yet, because unless you want to go up to Wisbeach and have a look where they're using slates, but this is going to be rolled out. We certainly should have the whole system underway within 18 months, but hopefully we're going to do it before that. And it goes further than just the police, because we've got the judiciary as well sort of signed off for this, so that we don't have to produce papers, it can all be done electronically. Again, saving masses of time. And the thing talks back so that if someone is arrested and the name goes in, it will flash red, and the constable will realise that he's just picked someone up who's done it before, perhaps several times. So it's warning him of that, and it might also prompt him to say he might have a look to see if they've got tax in the car as well. So this is giving them lots of information to help make whatever they're doing more efficient. It will also tell the constable on the beat where his mates are. So within Cambridge, they will know we've got someone in the next street or someone further on, and it enables them to organise themselves. If he thinks, crikey, I really need someone else on this, he can call someone in straight away. So it's going to improve everything. And I know a lot of people are saying, well, new technology, we've heard all this before, is it going to work? Well, what we're doing, we're not inventing new technology, it's already there. What we're doing is joining it all up. And we've got some very good friends locally called Microsoft who've really helped us on this path. And that is why I think, in fact I know the Home Office and others are very interested in this, because we found a way of doing this instead of going out and writing new software. Use what you've got, join it up. And that's what we do.
Councillor Tice.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so Graham, at the risk of my son possibly never speaking to me again, you said earlier that despite the reduction in your budget, you haven't reduced the actual numbers of police. And when you say you haven't reduced the actual numbers of police, do you mean actual numbers of full-time police or PCSOs or specials? Now, that's part one. Part two was, I suppose, ignorantly until recently, I had no idea that special constables it's totally voluntary. They're not paid. There are expenses, but they are not paid. And I don't know, quite taken aback by that. And I see the rise in the number of specials as policing on the cheap. I understand they're very well trained, and I do know that they do an excellent job. That's just in case you can hear. But I do worry that in these times we're looking for more people to do more jobs on a voluntary basis. So they volunteer to be sworn at, spat at, shot, stabbed, kicked, punched, all for no remuneration, which is admirable from their point, but it gives me concern.
No, we're not trying to do sort of policing on the cheap. We were very undermanned from specials compared with other forces. And it's something we needed to tackle. People that come into that, I don't know if you saw the BBC film, because they made the film on specials, on Cambridgeshire. It was based on Cambridgeshire specials. Quite fantastic what they actually do. Yes, they get lots of training, and in many instances, the companies they work for encourage them. I know, for instance, both BT and Network Rail and Sainsbury's, if they become a special constable, they're sort of flagged up, as material that can go through for higher things within the business. So that's a bonus for both sides. And of course, so many of them come in and do it voluntarily because they'd like to get into the police. And that is a big thing. We had some pass out last week and I was speaking to them. I said, I hope some of you are going to make a career of being a special and do it on a regular basis rather than just wanting to go straight into the police. Now, there are some that do just enjoy doing it, and this is something they enjoy in the house, but so many of them use it as a pathway into the police. So I think what we're doing, it costs us quite a lot of money to equip them. So it's not something on the cheap. We have to equip them. The training is incredible for what they get, and it's ongoing training. Because like I mentioned with the police and the PCSOs, we're also training them to become specialists. Because many of them already are. People who are working for IT companies are just fantastic, because we need that sort of help within the force. And we're training people as well on the medical side and on dealing with people with mental health problems and on sex offenders. So this is ongoing training, and it's very useful for them. So I talk to them regularly, and I go to every single passing out because I'm so keen on supporting them. And I managed to talk both the Lord Lieutenant and the High Sheriff to come along, so we're trying to sort of raise the profile and show how much we respect them. And the other thing I always do when we have it, I thank all the families, because when they're off on a Friday night, you never know what the hell is going to happen to them. So I thank the parents and the brothers and sisters as well for the part that they play. It is important. I don't regard it as being on the cheap. They can do as many or as little hours as they want. Some do an awful lot, just because they love doing it. But many of them, as I say, come back into the police force itself. And I can point you to a number that have gone up the ladder rather rapidly, which shows what high quality we're attracting into the specials.
Could I just put some big words into Councillor Price? I think you did ask a specific question about service levels and whether you're saying we're maintaining service levels of PCs, or whether the number of PCs and officers has gone down and the gap has been filled by PCSOs and specials.
No. We are trying to, in fact we're not trying, we are increasing the number of police constables. We were one of only 3 forces in the country that actually increased numbers last year. Not a lot, but at least we're going in the right direction. And that's where we want to concentrate, having the constable who's got all the power The PCSO is a backup of the police, an essential one, particularly within the community. So they work sort of very closely together. But in order to ensure you've got people who can deal with issues, then we need police constables. And of course, the specialists have the full power of a constable. That's the other thing that a lot of people don't realise, that they have the full powers of the constable. So that when they come out to help, they are serious operators.
I think the last question, I'm afraid, is either Councillor Manning or Councillor Todd-Jones, but Manning was just ahead. So
I'll try and make it really quick.
try and be quick.
Could we consider publishing the median call time rather than the mean call time, so we get probably more realistic? Actually, my experience of 101 has been quite good, I have to say. But if we can publish the median rather than the mean, it will probably quite help to let us know what the actual spread is. Have you looked at the Manchester experience with policing hotspots? So this is where they policed exclusively in the areas that had a problem and it didn't disperse crime. And my final very quick one is, I wonder if there's a slight mismatch between what is on alert and or maybe that's...
Councillor Manning, that's now 3 quick questions. So if you can answer the statistical geek question, speaking as a maths teacher, and the hotspots, and then we'll try and make
I have actually asked for a full report on 101, which will come to the board meeting the next sort of couple of months. I think we'll have a proper report on that. And I will ask if we've got that. We know what the response time is pick up because they say we're down to around sort of 7 seconds. And when I first took over as when I didn't take over, was nowhere else there. When I got the job as Police and Crime Commissioner, people were telling me how long it was taking. And I've told the story several people before, but I tried it out and it took me 9 minutes and 27 seconds to get a response. And so I did have some very senior people in to see me, and I asked them about it. And they told me there was a blip sort of a couple of months before. I said, well, what's the blip today then? Because it just took me 9 minutes and 27 seconds. And we did actually introduce, or they introduced, various things to actually speed it up.
Sorry, and could we go to the hotspots, because you have heard this before, so it's just, my Councillor Todd-Jones is going to beat me up later otherwise.
Yes, I'll try and speak to you.
Councillor Todd-Jones.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was just going to make the point that I think police community support officers have been a fantastic addition, I think, to community policing. Following up what Councillor Bird was saying, I think the crucial thing is that you have continuity, accepting, of course, there's career progression, but Arbury has really benefited from having 2 PCSOs who have been in place at least 5 years, if not longer, and a good example of how it really works. And never mind about technology, I think what residents, local groups and councillors really like is that local actual contact and seeing the PCSOs who get to understand community problems. The reopening recently of the Riverside project at 222 Victoria Road, both our RB PCSOs were there, and it's quite clear that the contact they have with those sorts of organisations and local residents are a huge benefit to the local community. So the message I would give is getting that balance absolutely right, and obviously the force evolves, and we don't want changes that affect that balance, and that's sort of how I'd like to leave it, really.
I hear what you say, and I agree with you. I mean, there are 2 factors there: recruiting people and trying to hold them in place. And there's also, of course, the question that we have to pay them. And so, therefore, budgetary-wise, I mean, if we could have more, we would. But one of the decisions we made is that the one thing we have to ensure that we increase, and that is the constables themselves. And we obviously need people. The PCSOs are wonderful. I mean, I know that because I talk to them. And they do actually know pretty well everything that's going on. And that's really what policing is all about, eyes and ears.
Given that we have reached the end of the slot, and I managed to find an extra 10 minutes by cutting the open floor finish short, and we have Mr. Campbell sitting and waiting, I'd like to say a thank you to Sir Graham Wright and his colleague for coming here this evening, and hope we can arrange something at some point in the future for a repeat visit. Thank you very much.
And can I, with your permission, disappear, because I've got some papers to read and I need to speak to the Commissioner for Hertfordshire tonight.
Good luck with that.
Okay. Thank you for inviting me.
And as Sir Graham disappears, I'd like to ask, I'm tempted to say Sir Andy, it's only a matter of time.